In today's video, we have all kinds of NHL news to discuss, including the latest trade talk around the NHL, which includes some talk on the teams like the Edmonton Oilers, Los Angeles Kings, and the Ottawa Senators. We have the latest updates as well from the Athletics Anonymous Player Poll. All kinds of interesting tidbits that the players think around the NHL. We have more news from the NHL waiver wire, potential big return on a goalie in Carolina, several other injury updates, news on expansion, and an update as well on the 2018 World Junior case. We should be getting some big info on Monday. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at today. First up, we do have more news from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday, we had news that the Ottawa Senators placed fourth line center Rourke Chartier on waivers. He did in fact clear, so he has now been assigned to the American Hockey League at the Belleville Senators. So the Sens are in a bit of a cap crunch. As I explained yesterday, I know some fans were kind of confused as to why they would do that ahead of the fact that they have one more game tonight before the All-Star break, and Anton Forsberg is on long-term injured reserve, not expected to return until probably at the beginning when they return from the All-Star break. So the rationale is this, is that Mads Søgaard is currently with the club as the number 2 goaltender. He is a goalie they would like to see to go back to the American Hockey League over the All-Star break. They have an extended break coming up here, and they'd like to keep him working and developing and not have a long layoff. So in order to do that, they would have to activate Forsberg before they can send Søgaard down, because you are required to have 2 active goaltenders on your roster. So because of that, they need the space to do it. Now, sending Chartier down and getting him through waivers is only a part of the puzzle. It's not entirely everything. Of course, keep in mind when Søgaard goes down, he doesn't need waivers. He will obviously have his salary come off the books as well. He's making $925. Chartier was $775. They did have a little bit of space beyond that, so that still only gets them just shy of $2 million. And Forsberg's making $2.725. So another player would have to come off the cap as well. So you're probably going to see another piece of activity from the Senators in the next couple of days. It could be another player on waivers. If it is, it's probably going to be Zach McEwen, given that it's going to be either him or Jacob Bernard-Docker. I would think Bernard-Docker would likely get claimed, whereas McEwen probably wouldn't, because he's got 2 more years on his contract, and he went through waivers once already this year. And so did Bernard-Docker, but Bernard-Docker's improved his play substantially since he cleared before. So I think that's probably what you're going to see, but there could be other moves which we'll talk about here when we get to the section of the trade section of the video. So stay tuned. The Senators will have another move coming here, likely in the next few days. We got good news from the Carolina Hurricanes today regarding the future of goaltender Freddie Andersen. He is able to resume on-ice activities with the Carolina Hurricanes, which is great news. He's been out for an extended period of time dealing with a blood clot issue. Andersen's now able to come back and at least get the ball rolling to begin his return. Now, it's hard to say exactly when he could play. It's certainly not going to be, today or tomorrow. It's going to be a little while, but the fact that he can start resuming on-ice activities is very positive, considering that he's got a lot of days here over the All-Star break that he can, if he wants to keep, getting better. And then, of course, I'd say probably at least a couple of weeks of practices without having any setbacks before he could play. So it could be, probably later into the month of February, but at least we know that he's able to make a return, or at least it's looking that way. He's progressing. He can start on-ice activities, and that might, make them not have to make another goaltending move. They picked up Spencer Martin on waivers. They have obviously Kochetkov, who's been there, for the most part doing relatively well. Ranta's still in the mix, so that will kind of take the pressure off a little bit. And we may even see a goalie there like Martin go back on waivers once Andersen returns. We'll have to see, but at least that's very positive news in that front. Big news in Vancouver today, not surprising though at all, because we already knew this was coming, but they did announce a 3-year contract extension for general manager Patrick Allvin. Of course, he and Jim Rutherford have done a pretty good job in Vancouver since they've started running that organization a couple of years back, or actually it hasn't really been that long. It feels like it's been forever now, but a couple seasons since they took over from Jim Benning and company there. So clearly, the Canucks are doing a lot better this season. We'll see how much they can sustain this in the second half, but they are considered to be, definitely not just a playoff team, but a contending team at this point. They've got great goaltending. Their defense is certainly better than a lot of us expected, and their forwards are scoring in bunches. So they've got a good recipe there. Rick Tocchet seems to be pulling all the strings at just the right time. They do have some things, obviously, like every team, that they would probably want to work on and maybe make some moves here before the deadline. But, for the most part, the Canucks are doing very well. So Allred, certainly it's a well-deserved extension. I expect him and Jim Rutherford to be running the show there for some time. So obviously that's, like I said, not surprising. Rutherford got his extension, I think it was last week, and we knew that it was just a matter of days before Allred's extension came through here as well. So nice to see them get that piece of business completed. Some injury updates and some roster moves. Youngster Adam Fantilli, the Columbus Blue Jackets, of course, top pick in the most recent NHL draft in 2023. Like a lot of his counterparts in that draft, like Bedard and Leo Carlson, is now facing a serious injury. When he left the last game a couple nights, or actually it was not last night, but the game before that when he was hurt, it was unclear how serious it was. You could tell that it was something to do with the back of his leg. Some concern it might have been the Achilles tendon. It was not, but he did suffer apparently a pretty serious calf laceration, and he's going to be looking at about an 8-week recovery. Now, the good news here for Fantilli is he was wearing the protective Kevlar socks, which are an extra protection, and it's supposed to work well against skate blade cuts, and clearly it didn't prevent it from happening altogether. But imagine if he hadn't had it on, it could have been really, really bad. This is bad enough considering it's an 8-week recovery. So can you imagine what he would have been looking at had he not had those on? So this goes to show you that this, equipment that we have in place now, and more that's becoming more and more common for, protecting against skate cuts like that. It's very much needed and very, very important, and can prevent very serious injuries, or at least reduce the severity of injuries. So certainly, glad to hear he had that on, or I wouldn't want to really hear just how bad things would be with his leg. Some other injury updates or roster moves as well. We get word that the Columbus Blue Jackets have also sent down Nick Blankenburg to the American Hockey League. The Blues have demoted Adam Gaudette, and the Kraken sent down Riker Evans. Pretty well in all those scenarios or cases of wanting them to be able to play more meaningful to games and get down to the minor leagues before the All-Star break kicks in here. So that's really all those moves are likely for. We saw the other day that the Montreal Canadiens and young defenseman Nick Baudin had mutually agreed to terminate his contract after clearing unconditional waivers. He has now got a new home. He has signed a contract to go over and play in Europe. He will be playing in Czechia. So we kind of figured with Baudin requesting his release and agreeing to mutually terminate the contract, and he must have had something lined up. We just didn't know where exactly he would be heading. So now we know. I figured it was somewhere in Europe, and that's exactly what is happening. As we talked about before, we're going to get a couple of big announcements here between the NHL and various other outlets, including the London Police, regarding the 2018 World Junior investigation over the next few days. On Friday, at the All-Star festivities, we're expected to hear from Commissioner Gary Bettman. I believe he's going to speak around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern time. And I don't know that he's going to necessarily touch on that investigation. He may or may not be prepared to make any statements at that point in time, because the police would not have had their press conference as of yet. I don't know if he'll actually answer any questions or just defer all comments until that is completed, but we will be hearing from him on a variety of other topics, including the international calendar of events, which we're hoping to get confirmation of a 2025, some version of a World Cup, 2026 Olympic participation, and possibly 2028 World Cup as well. We also are likely going to be hearing some other updates from the commissioner regarding the game, including possible plans around expansion. I'm sure that's a question, even if he doesn't bring it up in his remarks, that there will be questions from reporters, given what we saw out of Utah and Ryan Smith Group putting out that timely statement around urging the NHL to open up the expansion process. We also got, well, speaking of expansion, there's also some more significant news on that tonight as well. Kevin Weeks of ESPN was reporting some major news tonight that the Forsyth County in Atlanta, Georgia is pretty close to greenlighting their project out there, the big development, which will include a potential NHL arena, and it sounds like they're going to have a $390 million subsidy to go towards the arena. So clearly they're looking for a developer or owner to come in and do this development. They don't want to own it outright, so they're not going to just build the arena, but they are willing to give a lot of money towards it, which will be a big help to anybody coming in to set up shop. So we know that there was already a prospective ownership group that were interested for another shot at an Atlanta franchise. Of course, so this is another project that's kind of greenlighting and going ahead before the process even officially begins for the NHL to expand. So we know that they're very, very intrigued and interested to get a team there. We know Utah and Salt Lake City is as well. We don't know about the future of the Coyotes. I'm sure that's also going to come up in the commissioner's remarks and All-Star Weekend here as well. I don't know that we're going to get any firm answers or timelines out of them regarding the Coyotes, but they had previously mentioned that they kind of needed a plan firm in place by the All-Star game, and well, here we are, and there isn't one. So I don't know if that necessarily means that it's, a case of time being up, but I'm sure that time is ticking at the very least, and there's going to be some pressure applied. We know Bettman has done so much in the past to keep the team in Arizona. I'm sure he'll give them every moment they possibly can to find a solution. But if they do end up moving, it's fair to say that Salt Lake City, Utah is most likely where they have to go. And at the same time, it's quite likely that the NHL sometime in the next, whenever they do the expansion again, that they possibly look at Arizona again. Like, there are many believe that they do want to make that market work. It's finding the right spot and the right owner group. So we'll have to see where that goes. But with all this talk about expansion lately between Utah and all this news coming out of Atlanta, we know Quebec City's been wanting a team forever, and they have an arena that's fully built with over 18,000 capacity. I believe there is still a form of an ownership group. I know the Quebec government itself was willing to fund part of it as well and be a major investor, have like a conglomerate of partners. I don't know how the NHL would feel about that as an ownership group, but I do know that there's a lot of stuff in place to. It wouldn't take them long, I don't think, to get an application together. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to hear a lot about NHL expansion likely in the next few months would be my guess. And as I mentioned, London Police also going to be making a big announcement on Monday afternoon. It's expected to be around 2 o'clock Eastern time. We already now know the full confirmed identities of the 5 players that are facing charges, and what they're being charged with was, as of right now, appears to be sexual assault. All lawyers representing these players have put out statements on their behalf confirming that they have been charged and that they're going to be pleading not guilty, and that they will be, trying to clear their name and fight to verify their innocence here. So obviously, we'll see what the police say. Like I said, I'd be curious to see what comes next for the players. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to mean for their contract statuses. Are they going to be suspended? There's lots of questions that we don't know the answer to. There's also an NHL investigation that was completed, as well as a Hockey Canada one. I wonder, once the police actually technically the charges have been laid, once they make their announcement on Monday, if we'll actually get more details of what was found in those other investigations. You have to think that at some point they have to, let us know what they found, right? I mean, be curious to see once we learn more about that. We also got today in The Athletic the anonymous player poll, which they conduct every year on a variety of topics and questions, polling well over 100 NHL players to get their opinions on a variety of things around the NHL, including who's the best player, what's your favorite road city to visit, who's your least favorite road city, who's the most underrated, overrated players, things of that nature. A couple of the highlights from that player poll, you can get the full results through The Athletic if you have a subscription for it, or you can probably get through Google just to find various news articles talking about all the different stuff. I don't want to go over every single poll that was conducted because I don't want to make this video too long, but some of the key highlights for me: best jersey voted on was the Chicago Blackhawks. all of the top 6 jerseys were in the top 6 jerseys selected. So clearly players really admire and love the top 6, or not original 6 is what I meant to say, original 6 jerseys the most. So clearly, the Blackhawks being the favorite, and the other 5 of the original 6 being, next on those lists here. The top player in the NHL, according to his peers, is still Connor McDavid. No big surprise there. Obviously, Nathan McKinnon got a lot of love as well. One thing I found a little bit surprising, the top goalie, they still voted for Andrei Vasilevskiy. And no disrespect to the big cat. He's still an awesome goalie, and until another goalie, I guess, comes through with him, an awesome playoff performance that kind of dethrones him, it's kind of hard to take that away. But at the same time, the last couple of years, he hasn't been quite the same Vasilevskiy that we saw when Stanley Cup was going to Tampa a couple of years in a row. I'm surprised guys like Connor Hellebuyck or Thatcher Demko or even Shesterkin, Sorokin, those guys didn't get a little bit more love. Obviously, a lot of the players that have been around a while still feel that Vasilevskiy is the toughest goalie to beat in the NHL. Most overrated player turned out to be Trevor Zegras. Clearly, his high-end skill and some trickery that he can do is impressive, but according to a lot of his peers, it's not as impressive as a lot of people make it out to be. One of the most underrated players, according to his peers, as well as Sasha Barkov. I find that a little surprising. A couple of years ago, I would have said that. I feel he's gotten a lot more credit since then, and don't know that he really falls into that category anymore, but apparently a lot of people still feel that way. So we'll see some interesting opinions from the NHL players themselves. So as I mentioned, on to some trade talk around the league. The Los Angeles Kings are a team that's going to be very interesting to see post All-Star break what they do. Many questioning whether or not we'll see coaching change. It doesn't sound like GM Rob Blake is really wanting to do that. At some point, if things don't get better, they might feel like they don't have a choice. It sounds like for the plan right now, for the short term, is they should be getting back in the month of February. Winger Victor Arvidsson, they're hoping that he can come in and help stabilize the forward group and add some additional scoring. The group has had difficulty scoring as of late, but to me, a lot of their main identity is the way they play team defense and really collapse in front of the net and kind of play from the net out. And they haven't been doing that as well. So as much as I heard Drew Doughty calling out his teammates and talking a lot about points and point night and that they need to be more, I guess, less selfish, you could say, I don't know. I think he should look at himself in the mirror and his decor mates and kind of wonder if maybe they could play better too, to be completely fair and honest. It's not just one part of the team. I think there's a variety of players that could be better, including their defense. So it kind of seems to have lost their identity to some degree, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, they've also had a ton of trouble scoring. But you can't score if you don't have the puck enough and you're not, breaking out and kind of getting those looks like you should be. So with the Los Angeles Kings, they do have some young players that are very interested in likely getting a fresh start, you could say. Arthur Kaliyev is a name to watch, and Alex Turcotte's another name to watch as well. I think in the case of Kaliyev, he would welcome a fresh start after kind of losing a spot in the lineup and not being a consistent regular. Turcotte's a top 5 pick a few years back, who really has had very limited opportunity, largely because of injuries and stuff. There's been a lot going on with him off the ice. But I think the Kings are willing to move both players if they can find a deal to make this team stronger for the playoffs, assuming that they're still on track to get there. If the month of February after the All-Star game is really not any better and they continue to downward spiral, you got to wonder if they'll even be buyers at all. But Kaliyev is certainly a player, certainly to watch. There was some link wondering about the Ottawa Senators, given the fact that Kaliyev was a Hamilton Bulldog. And of course, we know the other Hamilton Bulldogs that are in a position of power now, and that's Michael Andlauer and Steve Stais, and they seem to bring in everybody that they've been connected to from their days in junior. So could a reunion with Kaliyev be in order? Maybe. If the Senators do move on from a guy like Tarasenko, which is not clear yet, obviously he's an expiring contract. We don't know what he's going to be doing. If he does not stick around, maybe a guy like Kaliyev could find a role with that team. But if they decide to re-sign Tarasenko and they work that out for him to stay, then I don't know if there's really going to be a lot of room. They have some of their own internal players that are going to be wanting spots as well. So be curious to see where things end up. But if the Kings do make some moves, look for those 2 young players to be some key pieces there. Speaking of Ottawa, though, obviously they said they have a cap problem, and they have some pending UFAs that are not necessarily part of the team's future. Tarasenko is not a given that he moves. A lot of people like to talk about Jake Chychrun as well. I honestly don't think we see a Chychrun trade before the deadline, unless the team calls the Senators with an offer that just is completely wow, that they can't refuse. I don't see it happening. I think they would prefer to wait, talk extension with him in the summer, see where that goes. I think the only reason Chychrun would be moved would be if they can't come to terms on an extension, if it's going to cost way too much and just doesn't fit from the financial perspective. But guys like Tarasenko, Dominik Kubalik, they still have some question marks around their future. Kubalik really is the guy I expect to go here in the short term. If they can retain 50% and even only get a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, I think he'll be gone as sooner than later, probably as early as really any time now. They need the cap space in the worst way so they don't have to put more players through waivers. So I don't know if they'll be able to figure that out here that quickly, or maybe it might have to wait a little bit. But Kubalik missed a few games recently with a minor injury, came back, he's been on the 4th line. He's the forward who's played the least the last couple of times he's been out there. He's just not a guy that plays the way Jacques Martin and the Sens want him to play. He has a really good shot. He can score goals if he's given the right opportunity, but they have way too many players playing ahead of him to give him a consistent role in the top 6 or on a power play. And you want your bottom 6 guys to play a little different style. You want them to block shots and be more defensive. And, well, he's just not that. That's just not him. He won't block a shot to save his life. So at the end of the day, I do expect Kubalik to go. I don't expect him to have any chance of returning to this club. I think with Tarasenko, there does seem to be some mutual interest for a new deal and for him to stay. But at the same time, it's not clear if he wants to go chase the Stanley Cup or not. Tarasenko will have full say over that, given the fact he has a full no-move clause. So we'll see where that goes. And in Edmonton, we know they added Corey Perry recently. They get Dylan Holloway back from injury, but they're not done. They've had a phenomenal win streak here. They're 1 win away from tying an NHL record. Be curious to see if they have to go into Vegas after the All-Star break. That's going to be really, really tough to do. So be curious to see how things go on that front. But regardless of how that win streak goes and whether or not they tie history or not, at the same time, they're expected to make more additions before the deadline. There's no doubt a young defenseman, Philip Broberg, could be one of the prime trade pieces they use to make that happen. Now, Philip Broberg has recently been linked to a team like the Anaheim Ducks. Of course, they might be looking for another young defenseman to bring in after trading Jamie Drysdale for Cutter Gauthier. Not that they don't have their fair share of them already. They do have guys like Mitnikov and Zellweger and a few other guys that look pretty good there as well in Anaheim. But could a guy like Broberg come in and find a role sooner than later? It's possible. And of course, a few players on the Ducks that might be interesting to the Oilers would be guys like Vetrano or Henrique. Vetrano can certainly score, could play a top 6 or top 9 role. Henrique might be more of a defensive center addition. At least Henrique's a little bit more of a 200-foot player, can play a little bit more defense, so, might be a better fit for them considering they already have tons of scoring as it is. But either way, there's no guarantee that the Oilers do make a deal with the Ducks. But regardless of what they do, we know there's going to be at least one big move likely coming for the Oilers, and expect Philip Broberg to quite possibly be the piece that goes out to make that happen. So that's all your news and rumors for today. So, of course, as always, let me know your thoughts on all of it down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.